hot off the heels from the Greenskins update, there is still one old world update we haven't covered on the channel, and that is the Beastmen. If you haven't seen my coverage on the Empire, Greenskins, or Wood Elves, I'll link the playlist in the upper right corner, or at least the Wood Elf one. And today we're going to talk about the mechanics of the Beastmen that really need an overhauling in the next DLC. Creative Assembly has told us that they plan on giving every faction from Game 1 an old world update, and the ones remaining are Beastmen, Wood Elves, Warriors of Chaos, and Norska. I think there's a high likelihood that we'll see the latter two as part of a possible pre-order DLC for Game 3, or even just a full revamp come Game 3, since that's when we can expect Chaos Demons and thus Chaos God specific units. Creative Assembly has also told us that we'll be getting one, if not two more DLCs, leaving the door open for one old world update per DLC. So in this video, we're going to talk about some changes that need to happen to the existing legendary lords, the horde mechanic, perhaps some new campaign mechanics, tech tree overhauls, units, the works, everything that we've done before. And please, as always guys, keep in mind that this is purely speculation, based off of nothing outside of the desire to kind of have a lot of the things changed that the community clamors for. I do know that Creative Assembly watches a ton of what YouTubers put out there, so if you have anything you'd like to see added that I didn't mention, just put it in the comments section. I know they also read those as well. Also a huge shout out to Matt Ross, Crisps, and 470 for their continued assistance in these old world update videos as we kick these ideas kind of back and forth at each other and kind of use each other as a sounding board. They're a huge boon to me. But the last thing I want to talk about is a tweet from 10 months ago, as well as a post by Rich in an AMA a while back. The tweet states, "We do not have a no DLC for DLC rule. It is something we haven't done previously and currently have no plans to. However, that doesn't rule out the possibility of us doing so in the future." Then, piggybacking off of that, we have Rich's words of, "Our aim across the trilogy is to give all races lots of love and attention. A little patience will be required, but we endeavor to get there in the end for everyone's fan favorite." And then cute beast emojis afterwards. So these two things I wanted to bring up, and I'm going to bring them up again when I talk about a DLC speculation for Wood Elves and Beastmen and what those units might include. But I wanted to bring this up because a lot of people have said no DLC for DLC. Well, this is Creative Assembly outright saying that we never had that policy. And on top of it, if we're taking a look at a faction like the Beastmen or the Wood Elves, that was part of Game 1. And that was part of a development budget for Game 1. So if we want to see them in Game 2, it will probably cost them development budget to do so. So seeing a DLC for a DLC is something that I could absolutely see happening here in Game 2, especially since there are units missing from the Beastmen roster, like a lot of units, and the Wood Elves need a lot of love. I could see that the Wood Elves not getting much from a DLC's perspective and making them the kind of FLC portion of a DLC, much how we saw the Greenskins and the High Elves together. The Greenskins didn't get a ton of new stuff, and really nor did the High Elves, but the main thing here is that the Greenskins got fleshed out with a great old world update and a lot of updates to their legendary lores, their starting positions, everything. So I could see that happening for the Wood Elves in a Beastmen and Wood Elf themed DLC, because actually these Reddit posts and these tweets are in regards to a Beastmen and Wood Elf DLC. I could see that the Beastmen being a large portion of the DLC, while the Wood Elves are kind of more of the FLC portion. But I just wanted to kind of talk about that real quick before we jump into this old world update video, because I think that one or the other is going to have to be a part of a paid DLC. But let's get into the video. Here we are in a Malagor campaign, and before we really get into what I think they should do for the Beastmen Campaign rework, I think we just have to talk about, right out the gate, what the problems are with the Beastmen Campaign. And I'll be totally honest with you guys, before doing this video, I hadn't done a Beastmen Campaign since Total War Warhammer 1 and the short campaign to unlock Boris Todbringer. But, oh my god, it is a god-awful campaign in so many ways. Let's just look at the tech tree. We'll start there, the tech tree. So, for one, you've got this line here on the right. The Seed of Hate down to the Embrace of Chaos. Now, looking at these, if you have never played the Beastmen campaign, they seem pretty cool, right? Chaos Corruption, and then your research rate gets an increase by 20%. Well, that's great and all, but then every other research reduces your research rate by 5%. It's abysmal. It's absolutely miserable. In fact, the only good thing about playing a Beastmen army is the fact that you can get like 80% reduction to upkeep cost through technologies and skills and so on and so forth. Other than that, you're always fighting an uphill battle in a totally unfair way. I think, in fact, the only two research or technologies that are worth it is Beastly Stupor to give melee attack and melee defense to your lords and heroes, and then Man Cleavers, which helps out your Ungors and Gores units by 15 melee attack. Everything else is terrible. Everything is trash. Like, honestly, there's almost nothing worth picking up in this tree except for this portion and maybe this one. These two. But to get to these, you have to sacrifice research rate. So it's just very counterintuitive. I don't really like it. I understand they're trying to create this theme that there is a lot of forces stacked against the Beastmen, but it kind of comes off as just a little bit, I want to say lazy, but it doesn't really have a lot of cool flavor to it. And because of that, it makes it really boring, I think, to just go through the technology tree for the Beastmen. Now, technology aside, we also get their stances, right? So they get the Beastmen Ambush, very similar to the Skaven Ambush. The use beast paths, everyone gets a version of this for certain, well, not everyone, but certain races do. What else with the world roots, the underway for the dwarfs, and the Skaven, I think it's underway for the greenskins as well. But they get beast path. So cool, they can't suffer attrition because Malagor starts in an area where he suffers attrition, which is just abysmal. So he's already stacked against him. So that's another thing that should change. Malagor shouldn't be automatically taking attrition from turn 1 because this campaign's so hard. I lost this campaign in like 11 turns. It was miserable for me. But Hidden Encampment requires campaign movement range to adopt. So when you pop into it, if you have just, say, sacked or razed a city, you then pop out into this portion of the land and you're now taking attrition damage and you can't switch your stance. I think you should be able to pop into Hidden Encampment for free. Have that cost no growth. I mean, that is like that right there is like an easy fix that could just help out so much. In addition, when you look at the Hidden Encampment, this little button here, it's just like the Vampire Coast or Warriors of Chaos or any other kind of horde mechanic where it does cost growth to go up this line. I think that's kind of rough, especially considering too, like tier 2 is 3,000. Well, it's not gold. It's called favor here. Favor is their income value, but it's 1 growth and 3,000 income for just a tier 2 ability to make Ungors and Ungor Spearmen. Like, that's really rough. And then looking at some of the other stuff, it's 4 and 5,000 income. So I think that the growth and the high favor cost is just such a huge handicap when you're playing as the Beastmen. It makes it just not very fun. In addition, when you attack a settlement, there's not really a ton of benefit. Yeah, you get some quick money, but then that's it. You then have created ruins that anyone can inhabit and expand their empire. So that's a huge thorn in your ass. Then you have the Dark Moon phase, that after 7 turns, you get the Dark Moon phase. Well, all the bonuses have massive penalties. Like, for example, you might be able to recruit more, but you can't replenish your units. Or units can replenish, but they lose all their melee defense, like minus 25 melee defense. And if you take a look at this army, the starting army, that's got 30 melee defense. Like, that's massive. He's going to have 5 after that. These guys are going to have 0. I had like a Gorbol with after the penalty, he had like 10 melee defense, and he almost got killed to a Necromancer. So the Dark Moon phase needs a huge revamp as well. And lastly, Bestial Rage, which allows you to kind of summon up a Waaagh. It's basically a carbon copy of the old Greenskins Waaagh mechanic. It even has the exact same UI there. And it's just as miserable as the old the old Greenskin Waaagh mechanic was. So with these 5 points in mind, you guys now have a really good idea for what really is just lacking in the Beastmen campaign. Outside of the fact you have very little actual cool narrative and objectives, it's just kind of a hodgepodge campaign where you kind of pick targets, you go and attack them, and you do whatever you can, and hopefully you can beat the AI before they beat you. So the cards are just stacked against you in not a fun way. So now that we have those 5 points established, let's go into how I think that the Beastmen campaign can be overhauled, can be changed and reworked to really be a lot of fun. So we're going to do this bit by bit. I've pretty much written down notes for each segment that I want to talk about as a specific rework. And today, or at least right now, we're going to talk about the technology tree first. And I think that the technology tree could be a lot of fun because the Beastmen are all over the map, right? Especially in northwestern portion of Nagaron. They're all over the old world. And with that, I think that a really great way to do this research tree, or the technology tree, would to have unique objectives that kind of gate further research. So for example, maybe you've got one that says win 5 battles against humans, and you get more research towards maybe gores and ungores and penalties when you're fighting humans. Like, okay, your gores and ungores get +5 melee attack, and also it's -5 leadership when you're fighting against men. Or maybe at the end of that line, there's some sort of a super objective, like, okay, sack Altdorf, and that maybe grants you a special unit or just a really strong campaign buff, something that's in line. Like, say for example, sack Lothern, which would give you a massive research rate buff and maybe some magic resistance to all of your armies. Or sack Karagazgul, and that would give you, Karak, and that would give you like an increased passive income or something of the sort. Like, make these kind of really cool objectives that kind of give you a certain objective then for your Beastmen campaign, to give you a little bit of motivation to go and destroy specific set races and kind of go about the land in a way that you see fit, but giving you certain technology rewards. And I think even if you didn't do that, if you just remove these research rate penalties from every single research in the center 2 columns, it would be, in this far left column too, it would be way better. Even maybe just have it, okay, this one reduces your research rate by 5%, or this one. That would just make a lot more sense and reduce the massive bonus to research rate on these. Like, the research rate juggling, while an interesting mechanic, it's just a kind of sloppy one that really can hamper you because research rate is very huge. In fact, some people go as far to focus that solely in their campaign when they're trying to choose their campaign buffs. So I think giving bonuses to fighting factions and penalties to those factions as well is really the right way to do the technology tree, to make it more flavorful and objective based in a way that is, I think, very true to the ultimate nature of the Beastmen, right? They ultimately have these massive invasions upon one region or the other, driven upon some sort of whispers from the Chaos Gods, or maybe the Herdstone said, okay, this is where we're gonna go, or the Shaman said it, or the Beast Lord said it. So it gives you these kind of set motivation, much in the same way we get with the Greenskins Old World update and their wall ability, which gives you objectives to kind of attack certain things that are for more and more value to get better units. I think that's a great way to put things into the technology tree. Looking back at the main menu, I do want to discuss some missing units and stuff really quick. I won't be discussing that in this video. I'm going to probably do a full-on DLC speculation like I've done in the past, for the Dwarfs and the Skaven and the High Elves and the Greenskins, and I'll probably do the Beastmen in another race, which I've yet to decide. And I'll discuss stuff like Torox and the Wargore and other units that are definitely missing from the Beastmen roster. But if you expected to kind of see that in this video, you shan't, unfortunately. We're strictly talking about campaign mechanics and how to make them better in their current microcosm. Now, the next thing, though, I do want to talk about is a currency. So we just have favor, and then we get the Dark Moon phase. That's really it for the Beastmen, and it's a little flat. You get so many cool, unique currencies. You get Imperial Authority added to the Empire, and I think that that's pretty crucial. Even the Dwarfs got a new currency added with them. So I think what we need here is a special currency for the Beastmen, and I've dubbed that Sacrifice, or Sacrifice currency. And this can be used in research if you want to circumvent the cost of favor for some things. It can just be the Sacrifice currency. This can be used for buildings in lieu of actual growth cost, especially in the beginning. And it can be used in campaign dilemmas, as well as the Dark Moon phase, which we'll get to. And this would contribute to a Dark Gods gauge in the exact same way I envision, or that we get with Norska. Get the Serpent, the Raven, the Eagle, and the Hound. And that is representative of Khorne, Slaanesh, Nurgle, and Tzeentch. Get that back on here with the Beastmen, because it seems like they don't really want to go full ruinous power names just yet until game 3. So cool, just use the ones from Norska. Bring that gauge into the Beastmen so we can start to get some flavoring from those units. And I think on top of this, you can actually have sacrifice be generated by doing things post-battle with settlements. And we'll talk about that in a little bit here. But I think that ultimately this would lead to a way more fun and way more intriguing Dark Moon event. And I think that the sacrifice currency as a whole would add just so much flavor to this campaign. So let's go into how that Dark Moon event can really be played upon with the sacrifice currency, much in the same way that we get with Imperial Authority. The current Dark Moon system, as you guys can see here, like I said, has really bad penalties. It only lasts for 2 turns, but all damage units will be fully replenished, but board growth minus 20. Upkeep plus 33%, but nice Bestial Rage bonuses for 3 turns, so a total of 30. So you do get these nice bonuses, but these terrible penalties. Especially this one, man. Like, I guess that's right. I forgot that they also randomize. There's a certain set of these that randomly kind of put themselves into this. So I think that the Dark Moon can be really revamped in a really cool way. And it plays upon that Dark Gods gauge. If the only way to contribute to the Dark Gods gauge is through the Dark Moon phase, then you get a really interesting mechanic here that you use your sacrifices in the same event that you have for Imperial Authority, where, okay, you've reached a certain level of, not Renat, but you get to 10 with a respective elector count, and then they can actually confederate into your nation. And you cost you Imperial Authority, or there's certain dilemmas that cost you Imperial Authority. Well, the Dark Moon would cost you sacrifices that you get from persistent buildings and settlements, which we'll talk about, or sacking and dealing with settlements. And through that, you're given one of 4 options. And I think that could be really cool here, because if you're focusing on this mechanic of bringing Khorne, Nurgle, Tzeentch, and Slaanesh into the game, it makes the game immediately more diverse. So you can spend 0 sacrifices, and you get, 1 blessing and then 1 curse. And I'm going to throw up a table here as created by Overkill, Matt Ross. He's the same gentleman who made the Greenskins WA table from our Greenskins Old World update. That is more or less in the game now. So he's got some really awesome ideas, and I wanted to showcase those again. And then maybe you spend 50 sacrifices, and this gives you just a simple blessing. So you get a bonus, no negative effects to it. Or you spend 100 sacrifices, and you get a common blessing and then a rare one. And what I'm saying by that is, well, they can kind of shuffle these blessings much in the same way they do for the Dark Moon phase as it is, where it's random what you're going to get. It might be really strong, it might be really weak, it just depends on where you are. So that kind of brings that randomness back into the Dark Moon phase, where, okay, if you're going to spend 100 sacrifices, you get a rare blessing, which is, a random one, and a common blessing, which is random. I like that, as it kind of really gives you a good variety. In addition, the last one, 200 sacrifices, could just give you a common blessing, either permanently or on a set amount of turns, and then grant you a god-specific unit, especially if you reach a certain stage in the gauge, just like Norska, right? Norska, you get to the end of that thing, you're granted some unit that's specific to that god. And those blessings can then fall in line with the god you're dedicating them to. So let's say you make your dedication to Khorne. Okay, well, there's your plus 10% weapon strength. But you're also going to get a Curse of Nurgle because you only donated no sacrifices. So you also get a reduction of hit points by 10%. That's, of course, hyperbole here. But this can then kind of expand on. Like, weapon strength can be Khorne's big boon. Melee defense can be Nurgle's big boon. Tzeentch, in the tabletop, it was all around ward save. So give like a 5% ward save for going down the path of Tzeentch, or maybe even research rate. Slaanesh can be melee attack. It can be maybe even speed or charge bonus. Doing these things that kind of give you that hint towards these dark gods, I think, is a great way to make Beastmen a lot more rich and fun. And it's going to be in the game with Game 3, so we might as well kind of get our feet wet with this. We already get it with Norska. Might as well do it with Beastmen, and it's only a matter of time until we hopefully get it with Warriors of Chaos. And I think the Dark Moon phase, once it gets that little revamp, will just be a way better portion of the game versus oh man, I hope in 6 turns I don't get just complete crap offered to me that actually hinders my campaign. So I think that's a really good start with the Dark Moon phase. Next up, I want to talk about the Hidden Encampments, and we already kind of went over this a little bit, so this won't be a huge section, but I really think that this could be just easily done away with, or at least fixed, by curving the actual favor cost of all of these buildings, having the tier 2 and tier 3 be a little bit more in line with the other factions. We've gotten this with almost every other faction, getting their tier 2 and tier 3 buildings kind of reduced and adjusted around. But I think it's huge. And on top of it, tweak the growth cost. Maybe not make it so that all tier 2 buildings cost 1 growth. Maybe make it so that rather than 1, 2, and 3, it's 2 and 3, or just 1 and 2. And maybe the bottom tiers cost sacrifice, or the top tiers cost sacrifice currency. This way you're not just gated by your growth, which encourages, I think just when you have growth be the main thing, you can't get as many armies out. And if your army gets completely destroyed, then you're just immediately fighting an uphill battle. And I think that's probably the worst part about playing the Beastmen, is you have to play overly safe to the point where you're probably going to save scum a lot, and if you're on legendary, it's going to be super punishing. I just really don't appreciate the horde mechanic of you just losing everything. I think the Nakai was a really strong step in a really good direction for the horde mechanic, but I still think it could use some further tweaking. And on top of it, I think just simply being able to move into Hidden Encampment and have it not cost any movement points is huge. I think that would be massive. Maybe if it's only 5%, or you can only do it if you've just recently fought a battle. Because, like I said, if I go and move to the floating village and attack and take this, then my army, and I don't take it and I just destroy it, my army just stands out here, and it can just get targeted and destroyed. So, or it just takes attrition damage after the amount of damage it already took over here at the floating village. Now, it's not the case everywhere, right? You aren't going to be always surrounded by attrition damage, but chances are you probably will. So I think that being able to pop into Hidden Encampment stance easier is going to be a large boon to any Beastman player. Okay, now our another thing is when it comes to dealing with settlements. And I think that this could be really evolved in a cool way. So right now we get Raise and Defile. This gives us Chaos Corruption, Local Region plus 100, and Horde Growth. And this one, Loot and Raise, just simply gives us money. So I would like to see, instead of 2 options here, 4 options, and bear with me on this. So the first one, Raise and Defile, I guess that could stay as is. In my notes I have Sack and Raise, which is get money and growth bonus, but I think that we could keep that as Raise and Defile. Or, I just had an epiphany as I say this out loud, this could be changed to Sack and Raise, or Loot and Raise, kind of like this, and give income and growth bonus, and Raise and Defile, which would replace the one I have in my notes as Sacrifice. And in that case, it would give you sacrifices and a growth bonus. So what I'm saying is that rather than it giving you sacrifice and growth bonus, maybe it gives Chaos Corruption and sacrifice currency bonus. And that's just kind of, I had notes and I've now changed my notes because of this epiphany in my brain. But basically you've got 2 options, one to get money and growth, or one to get sacrifice and chaos corruption immediately. Then the other 2 options outside of that, one would be Unliving Idol in the, I think it's the 6th edition Beastmen Codex or Beastmen Army book. There was a item called Unliving Idol. You could take it on your Demon Prince, and he was considered a Beastman General, so you could take beasts. That's where this comes from. But the way I kind of envision it is, this is a permanent thing that is positioned in the settlement, much like you get with the Wood Elves and their outposts. And the Unliving Idol would give a garrison, and it would give you passive sacrifice currency, as well, or sacrificial currency, might be a better way to say it, sacrificial currency and growth bonuses. So you get that passive all the time. Or you go Herdstone, which gives you a garrison again, but it gives you then money and a passive growth bonus. So you're basically trying to decide, do I want favor, which is their money, or do I want sacrifice, which is my new hidden or new currency that I'm proposing? And both objectives are both permanent settlement placements allow you to have garrisons in these buildings. And the reason I say that that is important is because right now, I'm going to press this button. Raise and defile. Okay, well now the floating village is kind of just up for grabs. And I have a number of mods on, guys, so if you notice things, you're like, well, my game doesn't look like that. I just have a number of mods. I'll put them in the, I'll make a comment and show you guys all the mods I've got in case you want to copy any of them. But now someone else can just grab this. And on the map, sure, it's just a big open spot. I think that with Nakai and having the Spirit of the Jungle was kind of cool, you know, you had like this AI faction, but I think at the end of the day, it ultimately ended up hindering you because you were always trying to defend the AI faction. My idea here is you get a garrison that you can then control if it gets attacked, and it grows over time based off of, you know, the chaos corruption in the area, other things like that. Maybe you have to actually put favor into it to make it grow, but it just would simply be one building, much like the keeps over here in the Empire, that just grows over time. And maybe it costs sacrifice to grow larger, and that's how you can generate more out of it, or maybe it's favor that you just use as a currency. So either way, this thing can grow over time, and you have a garrison to basically create something of an empire that gives you passive bonuses. Because right now, you just create power vacuums. What you do as Beastmen is you run around the land, you destroy these things, and you create power vacuums. And it is really easy in the later game for there to be 5 or 6 really strong factions that just gobble up everything else. And good luck cracking into those things because you don't really have a power base to push out from or to fall back to. This is, I think, is a good way to give the Beastmen a foothold in other locations on the map so they can actually push out to a strong, you know, advantage, or at least to a strong spearhead. So I think that giving that kind of persistent garrison is a really, really good way to go about things. And then furthermore, you can have persistent settlements from that. Now, I don't say like persistent settlements in the scope of, oh, I'm going to grow out Morgheim here. I just mean that from those little garrisons, either the Unliving Idol or the Herdstone, you can dedicate them to the Chaos Gods. And if you remember playing Nakai or any of the new Lizardmen, you've got this new button over here, which I'll flash up on the screen real quick, that shows you like a dial you can go through. So maybe you get your Dark Gods gauge for sacrifices, and for every Unliving Idol or Herdstone you dedicate to a Dark God, you then get more benefits that you can get for, say, specific types of units or a specific branch of your military. Like, say, okay, I'm going to do a bunch of sacrifices to Khorne or Hound, as it were, for Norska. Well, this means I'm going to get a lot of weapon strength bonuses and unit bonuses for Minotaurs, let's just say. Or Cygors can be for Nurgle. And I'm just throwing out blanket things here, blanket suggestions. But I think this kind of growing evolution of you sacrificing towards the gods and appointing these idols and these herdstones towards the gods makes for a really cool ultimate narrative, wherein you can add in all of the many Bestigor units that were given marks of chaos. And you've got other versions of Beastmen units that could then have marks of chaos. This was a big portion of the Beastmen army book. And that's kind of the cool thing about playing Beastmen is you're not playing Warriors of Chaos, you're playing Beasts of Chaos. And let's get those ruinous powers back here, because I think it's going to make for a way better playthrough right now. So on top of those persistent settlements, they could also possibly spawn Chaos Incursions. Because again, what you deal with creating these little power vacuums is there's no real way to defend them with these garrisons. So it'd be interesting if depending on the tier rank of the idols or the herdstones, they can generate chaos incursions every couple of turns. Slower at the bottom tiers and obviously faster at the top tiers. So let's just say a tier 5 garrison would push out a chaos incursion like every 5 turns, and it will choose a war target for itself, like, oh, you're at war with the Empire, well, we're going to go attack the closest Empire settlement. And this way it gives pressure, because although you can get a massive reduction in upkeep for the Beastmen at 80% or so, and you don't have supply lines to worry about, it's still very hard to maintain a lot of pressure as the Beastmen. And these chaos incursions are a cool way to kind of add that Chaos Incursion theme back into the game, even if you're fighting against them, right, as the AI, because right now people turn on the Chaos Incursion mod to actually make Chaos scary and make it so that the armies of Order have to rally against it. Right now, you can kind of just shut them down and you're kind of okay. So I think kind of giving this way to make incursions sprout out from these Beastmen Herdstones and Unliving Idols is a really cool way to add on to things. But I think the last thing we have to talk about is Bestial Rage. To talk about Bestial Rage, I've actually moved on over to my Greenskins campaign to talk about the new WoW mechanic. And I really feel that the Bestial Rage mechanic could mirror a lot of the great things that have come in the new Greenskins update that really just rehashed and gave really good direction to the Greenskins WoW. Maybe the Bestial Rage kind of plays along the same mechanics, right? When we take a look at the Regiments of Renown portion, they're driven by the trophy system, right? So you've got 6 different types of Regiments of Renown, two of each are bound to one type of trophy. So the big trophy, the bigger trophy, and then the biggest trophy. So it'd be very interesting if for the Beastmen it was very much the same. Maybe human trophies or dwarf trophies. It could be race specific to get certain legendary lords, special Regiment Renown versions of god-aligned bestigors or stuff like that. I mean, really the sky's the limit depending on how Creative Assembly wants to take the Beastmen rework. If it wants to pepper in some of the ruinous powers into the Beastmen finally, well then this would be a really cool way to do it, I think. And on top of it, you could get that same direction that I was talking about with the technology tree, with the sacrifice points, and so on and so forth, with the new Bestial Rage mechanic, however that is done. If, say, okay, Bestial Rage, just like the WoW mechanic where you do get a certain target and that trophy results in certain things, those are certain targets which result in certain outcomes or certain size of trophies, so on and so forth. So I really don't think that redoing Bestial Rage needs to be a crazy departure from the new WoW mechanic, because they're very similar in their execution from game 1 into now game 2. And I really like, probably one of my favorite things about the new WoW mechanic is that the WoW army just accompanies your army. That just makes it so succinct and so easy to use the mechanic, and it just kind of feels like a no-brainer, like, man, why didn't we do this before? So I think Bestial Rage could really just be that same exact format. So if we don't get a Dark Moon phase, if we don't get a special unique resource for the Beastmen, then Bestial Rage has to be extremely unique, away from WoW. But if we do get a revamped Dark Moon phase, and we do get that unique resource in sacrifices, and take a look right here. Greenskins update, scrap is the new resource for Greenskins. Dwarfs get their runes, so on and so forth. So getting a special resource for the Beastmen wouldn't be too far-fetched. And if we do, like I was saying, get a Dark Moon phase rework, or get that special resource, so on and so forth, then Bestial Rage doesn't need to be as unique. I kind of feel that if you get so many unique portions of the campaign, then you can kind of carbon copy a couple ones and kind of just skirt by. I'm okay with that kind of quote-unquote sacrifice or that compromise, especially if you take the Bestial Rage mechanic from, or the WoW mechanic from the Greenskins, make it Bestial Rage, and just make the UI elements actually Beastmen looking and not Greenskin looking, and I think you're fine right there. The Bestial Rage from 1 was the exact same WoW mechanic from 1, and even the same UI elements. So I think just really kind of making it have that true Beastman touch and making it feel true and unique to the Beastmen, just from either the targets, the trophies, the Regiments of Renown, and again the colors and UI elements, then that's really all you need to do. But if we don't get all the other things we talked about, then I think getting a big overhaul to Bestial Rage is going to be another huge portion of a Beastmen Old World rework. And at that, it brings our video here to a close. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little romp through a lot of speculation about the Beastmen. And there are so many different ways that they can improve upon the Beastmen faction, right? I mean, I know we talked about some of the big issues, right? With the tech tree, with the hidden encampments, with attacking settlements, the Dark Moon phase, and the Bestial Rage. Those are my big 5 issues I personally had with the campaign. But this also extends to stuff like Malagor starting in the middle of a heavy attrition area and him having not very much room to navigate around. Little things like that are going to be huge. And if the next legendary lord, whatever it is for the DLC or FLC of the Beastmen, however they want to structure that, is geared around someone that's maybe in Naggarond, that would be huge. When you look at the Dark Elf map in the 8th edition or 7th edition army book, I can't remember which one, this actually might be in the Beastmen book, but it shows that the upper left portion, the northwestern portion of Naggarond, is almost entirely ruled over by Beastmen, or at least not ruled over, but filled with them. So I think spreading the presence of Beastmen around the map for the Mortal Empires is going to be pretty pivotal to making them a little bit more intriguing when you're playing them from now on. And I think that tweaking all their mechanics in a way that makes them more inviting and more approachable as well as unique is going to be the real crux here. So we will follow up this video now with a Beastmen DLC themed video where we talk about things like the Jabberslythe, the Gorgon, Taurox, all of the DLC speculation or FLC speculation that I have in mind for the Beastmen. I didn't want to put them in this video because I haven't done that in the other rework videos, so it felt like it would have become way bigger and longer than it had to be because I would have been just spreading the focus. But we can talk about these proposed speculations or this proposed update in that DLC video where we talk about that further speculation of new units, new lords, a new overarching mechanic like we did with the Master and the Molder DLC where I talked about the dwarfs and Throt the Unclean, or with the High Elf and the Greenskin, where I talked about new mechanics added to the game alongside the legendary lore that's typically done with DLCs and FLCs. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching here today. Let me know in the comment section some things you would love to see added to this game for the Beastmen, or ways that you would love to see the Beastmen changed. Like I said, Creative Assembly, they do read the forum posts, they watch Reddit, they watch YouTubers, so feel free to kind of be vocal about the things that you want to see changed. They're not always going to take every single scrap of advice, but the more that they have to draw from, that people want, the easier it is for them to create a DLC that we really appreciate and like. So as always, like I say, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment below, all that kind of fun action. And if you do subscribe, go ahead and slash the little hoove. Gore with your horns, the bell icon, and turn on all notifications for the channel. That way you can find out when I'm doing streams that usually have giveaways attached to them, any of my coverage on Baldur's Gate 3, Bannerlord, or any of the other games that I cover on the channel, as well as the lore. But as always, have a good one and take care.